Hey guys, I'm Nick Capurso. I'm an Android developer at Capital One, and welcome to my talk, Have Your Cake and Eat It Too, with A-B testing. A-B testing has been something we've been doing at Capital One for a number of months now, and I've been giving like little pieces of this talk to a lot of the other Capital One Android teams who have started getting into A-B testing. They want to know how we've been doing it and what are some of the pitfalls that we've had to jump over. So I'm hoping to share some of that with you guys today. So I'll start out by covering, what is A/B testing if you haven't heard about it before. Quick show of hands, who does A/B testing in their apps today? Okay, a few people. So for everyone else who didn't raise their hands, bullet point number 2, I'm hoping to convince you why you should start A/B testing if you're not doing it already. And then, the next point after that is, we're here at droidCon to learn like awesome third-party libraries and best practices. So I'm hoping to cover, how do you A/B test and some of the third parties that you should be using. I'll specifically cover Firebase Remote Config and Swerve. These two you could do a talk over either one of these. And so what I'm really going to do is talk about how to evaluate a third-party library. So if you go shopping for a third party to do A/B testing, what you need to keep in mind, and what are some of the pitfalls that you want to sort of avoid with these third-party platforms. I'm going to talk about cake for a sec. So the title of my talk is Have Your Cake and Eat It Too with A/B testing. The original phrase is you can't have your cake and eat it too, this idea that you can have one set of things, but you can't have another, or it's difficult to have two sets of things at once. So what's our cake for developers, right? Obviously, we want our apps to be scaled up to a large user base. We want to have users who are engaged. They're coming into our apps time and again to use it. We obviously want to build great features into our apps, and we want to use the best practices, which is why we're here at droidCon. But there's more to it, right? Like, we want to have users come into our apps and feel like we cater to their specific interests. We don't want to have just engaged users, but we want to drive where their engagement is going, right? You release a new feature, you've worked hard on it for a couple months. You want to say, hey guys, like, go check it out. It's awesome. It follows that obviously you want to build successful features. It's hard to know what's going to be successful ahead of time. And when something's out there, you want to be able to iterate whether it's doing good or bad. And ideally do this without having to do a release every time and having your users upgrade. And finally, that all kind of culminates down into you obviously want to be rated highly. So it's the title of the talk, my answer to having your cake and eating it too, A/B testing. So let's talk about that. So what is A/B testing? It's a fairly straightforward concept. You take an experience or a feature in your app, and you have some sort of goal for the users during this experience. We have a login screen here, email, password. You can go through a forgot your password flow. You can also sign up if you don't have an account. I'm going to bring attention to the sign up button because if someone downloads your app, they obviously think it's interesting. They'll have use of it, and they open it and see, oh man, I got to have an account. And people will drop off at this point. But you want them to click the sign up button, right? You want them to, maybe you have a very simple sign in or sign up. Maybe it links to Google, like it's a 5-second process. But you got to get them to click the button, right? So you might think, all right, maybe I come up with an alternate design. I make the button background green and the text white. It pops a little bit. Is that going to cause more people to press it, new users? And so there you go. You have two designs, A and B, right? We split our user base into two groups. Some of the people get the traditional screen, and the other group of people get your nice green sign up button. And you measure, what's the ratio of people, new users who come in and they press that button. You kind of get some data on it. You say, hey, the green button works out awesome, so I'm gonna roll that green button out. I'll hard code it in the app, and that's what the design will be going forward. Congrats, you've done A/B testing, and you've used it to make a data-driven decision about how your app should look and feel. So really, it's 4 steps. You start out by defining a goal for a specific experience in your app. What do you want people to do? you have some sort of way to divide your user base up into multiple groups so they could try out all the different variations you have in mind. You have a way to deliver the content to each of these groups. You may have more than 2 groups, and you want to have some way to deliver them content. And then you need some sort of analytics component to it where you can report from your app, did the user take the action that I wanted them to do? To get into some terminology, we call these groups variants or treatments. Typically, one of them is designated as the control, and that just means the control is the group of users who don't get any special treatment in your app. They receive the content exactly as you coded it, and then you have a number of variations off of that. You run your test for a while, you say, hey, variant 2 works very well. I'm declaring that to be the winner, and then you roll out that variation to 100% of your users. Typically, there's some extra steps in there. Like you see that variant 2 is winning. What you should do is not jump the gun and say, all right, let's roll this out to 100%. You should iterate on your test. If it's doing well, rerun the tests and randomize your groups again and see, does variant 2 still work out under my new testing conditions? Theoretically, it should if it's the true winner. And obviously, you want to hard code the winner into your app going forward, and that's what it'll be in your next release. Just to give an example of where we used it in the Capital One wallet, one of the first A/B tests we ran was we have this screen in the app when you log in for the first time. We asked to opt you into push notifications. A lot of us have something similar. This is a great spot for A/B testing because we want people to give us permission to send them push notifications. And so we thought, hey, let's do something really simple and change the title. It started out as enable notification. Let's do something a little more catchier, like, hey, get notified. We throw some emojis in there if we want. And the idea is, does the different title compel people to pay attention to the screen, read it, and say, hey, I actually want these push notifications, and give us permission. This simple change, so you swap out different titles, we were able to raise our push opt-ins by 5%. And you may think that's a low number, 5%, but for the amount of work, you're literally just changing out different titles and you're getting 5% more people coming in and giving you permission to opt in to receive notifications. That's something you could do in the morning while you're drinking coffee. And so now I'm going to talk about third-party support. You could certainly roll your own and build your own A/B testing platform. Certainly an option, but I'm going to cover mostly third-party support and what you need to think about while you're shopping for the right library to use. There's a number of great platforms out there for A/B testing. Here's 5 of them. I'm going to cover Firebase Remote Config, which is a free product. It's not tiered or anything like that. You can go use it right after this talk. And I'll talk about Swerve, which is what we use at Capital One. You have to pay for it, but I'm going to be going off of the public docs, and it's also open source, so I can kind of speak to that. But it'll be interesting just to talk about the difference between a paid and free product, and also go over what I think you should look out for when choosing any A/B testing platform. Real quick, I'm going to talk about what the basic interaction model is. So how does an A/B testing platform work? Just so we can keep that in mind. Most of these third parties have some sort of server, like a dashboard that you log into. And this is where you host your content that you're going to A/B test, right? These could be titles of different screens. It could be layout file names. It could be colors, whatever. You're hosting it on this server for your clients to then pull down at runtime. This is also where you take your content and you start your A/B test. So you take our nice square, you apply a couple different variations on it, that becomes an A/B test. You do the same thing with triangle and then the star. You don't have to run an A/B test off of everything on your platform. You can just use it to dynamically deliver a piece of content that you can change at will. So you have all this content hosted on your server. You go ahead and take their SDK, you integrate it into your app. Typically, there's some sort of initialization that you do on the SDK, and what that will entail is it'll go out, it'll talk to your server and say, hey, this is device ABCD, give me all of the content that this user should receive. It does sort of like a download all at once, at least with the platforms I'm talking about today. It downloads all the content from your A/B testing platform after having applied like the variations according to that user. So the user of your device may be in like the green square test and the purple triangle test, so they get that variation of the content back. But it does this download all at once. Typically, it's like a JSON type response, and the SDK will cache all the content. And the reason why this is great is because when you actually need to go through your A/B test on the client, all the data, all the content's already cached in your SDK, and there's no further network calls needed. It just does one big download up front. And then there's some sort of analytics component to it where you can report back to your framework, hey, the user took the action that I wanted them to do. And so now I'm going to cover like my checklist of, hey, if you're going shopping for an A/B testing third-party library, what are the things you need to keep in mind? And I'm going to start by talking, the bulk of it is going to be, obviously, how well does your platform do A/B testing? So I'm going to start with SDK initialization. It's fairly straightforward. There's some way that you have to tell the SDK, hey, go grab me the content that this user should see for the A/B test. But the question is, when and how is content downloaded? The when is usually, you would kick off the initialization process in your application on create so that all the content is ready and downloaded for when the user runs through the app and passes through one of your A/B tests. The how, fairly straightforward. This is what it looks like for a Firebase remote config. You get a static instance on it. You call fetch, which triggers it to go do the download of all the content. You can pass in an int here, which just says don't do the network call if we've done it in the last n seconds. So there's this idea that it will cache the the content that was downloaded previously, so you could run off the cached content for a while. But you do a fetch, you add a complete listener so you know when the download is complete, and you can check whether it was successful or not. And then with remote config, there's this idea of activating the fetched content. What this does is it just overrides the cached content with what was downloaded. So you could run off the cache for a while and not have to worry about refreshing with the network if you so choose. Swerve, this is kind of all abstracted by the SDK. You really call create instance, you pass in your API key and stuff. Behind the scenes, it'll go out and do the download and override the cache for you, so you don't have that sort of control. It's abstracted from you. You can add a listener, and Swerve's a little weird because you get a callback, but it doesn't tell you whether or not the download was successful or not. You kind of just know that the request was complete, which is a little odd. But the key thing here is, yeah, you can initialize your SDK, but can you initialize it when you're not in the app? And the important scenarios for this is if you have a push notification that you regularly send to your users. Maybe the push is received by your app, and then you want to A/B test the content. You take that string that you usually display, and you want to try and display something different, because a lot of us use push notifications as a way to get people back into the app to engage with it. So it's a great spot to do A/B testing. The question is, can you initialize your SDK when you're not in the app yet? Swerve, the answer is actually it's difficult. You can't just call create instance, because the way the SDK is implemented is that it's very tightly bound to the activity lifecycle. So if you actually haven't seen an activity yet, it won't trigger the automatic download. You could still do it. They offer up a REST API, so you could go and like manually download all the content yourself. But that's why it's difficult. For remote config, you can do the code that I had a couple slides ago. You call fetch, it does the download, no problem. But it's, again, one of the pitfalls that you don't want to fall into. And whether or not the SDK caches download, I'm pretty sure this is fairly standard. Next, I'm going to talk about content management. So you have a screen you want to A/B test. For example, we have this location permission explanation mockup screen. A lot of us do this for before we show a permission dialog. We want to explain to people why we need a certain permission. Again, another great place to A/B test, because you want 100% of your people to give you to grant you the permission. Right, in this case, there's a couple different things we could swap in and out in an A/B test. We could try different titles, we could try different images, body text, button text. We could go further, do like background color, font color, whatever. But we need to have a way to host all of this stuff on our A/B testing platform so that we can then provide variations on it for our tests. This is what it looks like for Firebase Remote Config. It's your standard Firebase console, but you go down to the Remote Config area. And what you're really doing here is you're just defining key value pairs of all the content that you want to host. It's just a flat list. You don't have this idea of like a directory structure, but you do have a search functionality. So this can get kind of long depending on how many different things you're A/B testing at once. And so you just want to hope you have a good naming convention. The key value pairs, like the terminology for them that remote config uses are just parameters. Parameters are the key value pairs. This is what it looks like when you're building one, fairly straightforward. And I'm going to talk about that add value for condition when we get to the A/B testing part. This is what the Swerve dashboard looks like. It's our corporate sandbox, so I'm kind of blurring out all of our other stuff so I don't get in trouble, but I've created like a location permission mock-up resource just so we can talk about it. The way that Swerve organizes its content is it does like a 2-level hierarchy. So what we're looking at here is not the key value pairs, it's a container for for related key value pairs. So we have a location permission, it's called a resource. If I were to click into that, you get a more detailed view, and at the bottom there where it says resource attributes, there's your actual key value pair. So a resource is a container for multiple attributes, which are your key value pairs. It's a little more organized this way. You can define like tags and like resource classes to do filters on. The organization is important because as a developer, you may not be the one that manages this content. It could be your product team that goes in and hosts the content and wants to run your A/B test. So it needs to be fairly intuitive for them to go in, make the changes they need, and run the tests. Once you've hosted content on your platform, even though we haven't actually run an A/B test and provided different variations, you're still hosting some content that you can just start to consume and pull down on your client just dynamically. And this is what it also looks like when you actually run an A/B test, but what gets returned is actually the variations of your content according to the user. For Firebase, it's fairly straightforward. It's almost like getting a bundle key. You call get string or get boolean or whatever your type is on the SDK, and it grabs that resource and casts it for you. For Swerve, because they use the 2-level hierarchy, you specify the resource ID, you specify the attribute ID, that gets you your value. And then the third parameter there is actually your default. So if Swerve is unable to download the resource, and there's a network problem, or maybe someone didn't go and define this on the dashboard yet, you have like a fallback value here, and it's specified at the time of retrieval. For Firebase, you also have to specify the defaults, but it's done all at once. So you call set defaults. You can pass in just a standard Java map to this of all your default values, key value pairs. You can also define them in XML as shown here. It's not as convenient because you're not able to reference string resources within like a plain XML file, but it's something to keep in mind. So content management, organization, again, remote config is kind of flat hierarchy. Swerve, you get a nice little 2-level. You get a little bit more power over filtering it and finding what you need quickly. A way to specify defaults, these two libraries do it differently, but in general, you're going to have some way to specify what the default is in case there's a network problem. But one question that often comes up is how do you A/B test images, right? Because what you're just doing is defining key value pairs. Neither platform actually supports hosting images. So how do you A/B test? How do you swap in and out different images for your screens? There's two ways you could do this. Number one, your key value pairs can just be like the file name, and you embed all the images in your client, and then based on the file name, that's what you show to the user. It works. You don't have to worry about like having a progress bar because all the images are embedded. but then at the same time, you're also embedding a bunch of images that the user will only see one of which each session. The alternative is to use URLs, so you just specify the URL and then you go fetch it at runtime. This is great because it's dynamic. You don't have to worry about embedding more images into your APK. But the problem is now when a user gets to a screen and they have to go fetch the image. Now you have to show a loading spinner just to grab an image, which is a pain. So what you end up having to do is have some sort of prefetching solution. So you grab all the images ahead of time, then when the user gets to that screen, like it's already been downloaded. If you use Picasso, it has an in-memory cache and also a disk cache that you can use as well. So you can do all the prefetching ahead of time, and then when they get to this screen where you're ready to show the image, it's already been cached for you. Another thing that comes up, especially if you're A/B testing large bodies of text, is special formatting. You may just want to put a line break in your body paragraph or something like that. Bold, italics, etc. Again, because it's just plain key value pairs on your dashboard, you can't actually do this sort of thing on the dashboard. So one thing you could do if you wanted to do this was you would define, you would put HTML tags into your content on the dashboard, and then the client would be responsible for doing HTML parsing this way. Localization is another big one, especially depending on what kind of app you have. This could be a very important topic. Again, you're just defining key value pairs on your dashboard, so you really need a way to specify the data in different languages if you support that. Remote config is actually really easy to do this with their condition system, which I'll be talking about in a couple slides. But basically, you don't have to worry about the different languages on the client. You ask for a string, and then remote config will know what language to serve you up. Swerve is actually a little harder to do this. You end up having to have separate key value pairs for every language. And so your client is then in charge of figuring out, okay, the device is in French, so I have to go grab the French resource, which puts some of the burden on you as a developer. And character limits. How long can your key value pairs be? Swerve 256 characters is problematic if you're doing large amounts of text. You'd have to break it up across multiple attributes. Firebase is great because the total of the entire project can't exceed 500,000. So you could theoretically have one key value pair where the value is 500,000 characters long and be happy with that. I'm going to talk about analytics because you have to have some way for your client app to report to your A/B testing platform, hey, did the user actually do what I expected them to do during this test? You can kind of guess that remote config, because it's Firebase, it's going to be very tightly coupled with Firebase Analytics. This is great if you're already using Firebase Analytics in your app. There's no extra work here. If you're not, then you have to go use Firebase Analytics. Swerve uses its own built-in analytics platform, so you're stuck having to consume their API for analytics. The actual code to send events is fairly straightforward. I'm not really going to cover Firebase Analytics, but you call log events, or for Swerve you call events, and you pass your analytic name. You can do a bundle for both if you like to pass extra information. But the caveat here is if you're not using the same analytics platform as your A/B testing platform, you run into this problem where you want to maintain your own internal analytics. Maybe you go out and use Adobe Analytics or some other product, but now you have to start sending things to your A/B testing platform. So you end up like duplicating some of your analytics to send to your internal platform and to your A/B testing platform. You kind of just have to live with that. But then you had this issue where your internal analytics become affected when you start to run A/B tests. Maybe you're trying to drive a bunch of users to a new feature that you've just added. And so now all of your internal analytics for that particular screen are going to be affected. And if, depending on who actually looks at your analytics, maybe it's a product person, maybe it's a business analyst, they need to be aware that you're running an A/B test that is influencing the erratic changes in your analytics. You can usually do this if your analytics platform allows you to supply a map or a bundle with it, so you can do something like you send an analytic and you also say, hey, these are all the A/B tests that could be affecting this particular analytic. User segment, so what is the process by which you divide your users up into different groups to target for A/B tests? There's three typical ways you can do this. One is by analytics. So you want to target all users who didn't log in this week. Next is user properties, which are individual pieces of information about the user of the device. For example, all users who live on the East Coast. And then random percentage, you don't really care. You want to target all your users and then just divide them up into a random number of groups. I'm going to start and talk about analytics and user properties first because they're very similar. Analytics, you can imagine since you have to send analytics to your A/B testing platform, it then has a way to like create groups of all users who've triggered a certain analytic. User properties, if you haven't used these before, basically it's just a key value pair that you send up from your client to your platform. So Firebase Analytics has user properties. Again, you just send up key value pairs about your particular user. Swerve, same deal. You can send up a map of key value pairs. Now, how you actually do the segmentation, how you actually break your user base up into groups. For Firebase, it uses what's called the condition system. And it's almost self-explanatory in that you're just defining conditions like if statements that your users can then match against, and then you can target them for specific campaigns. This is what it looks like when you're creating one. It's part of the remote config dashboard. You can kind of see the different things that you have the option to divide them up with. You can do a random partition based on device language, which is how you could target deliver different languages of your strings to your users, by region, by audiences, which is what is grayed out. That's a feature of the Firebase Analytics, and then by user properties. This is just what it looks like. For example, I want to create a group of all the users who have opened a notification. That's something that Firebase Analytics will track for you if you're using Firebase messaging. In this case, you take advantage of the audiences feature of Firebase Analytics, and you can just create a condition for people to match against. And so you end up building different conditions for different groups of people that you want to target for an A/B test. All people who live in the US or who speak French or have open notification, etc. Swerve side is very similar. You have their user segment system. Again, this is what it looks like and all the different things you can create groups from. The tab that's highlighted is just if you wanted to create a grouping of users who have triggered a specific event in the last week. You can also segment by user properties, as you see there, demographics, etc. And you get a nice list of all the different user segments you've created. With Swerve, it would actually show you, like I've hidden it, but it would show you the daily active users in each of your segments. So if you wanted to know at a glance, like how many people who've opened a notification are online right now, same thing for monthlies and new users. Random percentage is an interesting one because you typically want to do this even if you're segmenting by analytics or user properties. So you have all users who didn't log in this week. Then you want to create like 3 or 4 groups off of that to target them for specific things, right? So the one thing about random percentage is this idea of stability. So you could do something where you say, hey, shuffle all the users into 3 random groups, right? And then the next time you do this, you would want the randomization to be different. So a user who was in group A last time, maybe now is in group C, right? So you've changed the randomization each time you do this. But you may not want to do that. You may want to say, the random 3 groupings that I did last week, I want to target those same 3 groups for another test. So there's this idea of whether you want the users to be shuffled randomly again, or if you want to use a past shuffling. Kind of like a seed, right, for a random number generator. For remote config, this is how you would divide the users up into random groups. You use the random percentile option. What this does is just shuffles all of your users, and then you can take a slice of that random shuffling. In this case, we're just taking the first 25%. And what I'm highlighting here is the randomization key. It's the seed for your randomization. So if you wanted a different shuffling of your users, you can just set the key to be something else. Swerve, the randomization is built into their A/B testing, which I'll talk about next. But when you're building an A/B test, you can just say, overall the users, I want to have 3 groups. a control group that's 50% of my population, and then 2 variants at 25% each. Now I'm actually going to talk about the A/B testing. So you've hosted your content, you've sent analytics up to your platform, you know how you want to segment your groups for a particular A/B test. How do you actually run a test? I'll start by talking about Swerve because it actually has a dedicated A/B testing section as a part of its dashboard. This is where you would see all your A/B tests, if they're running or not, how long they've been running, and how many people are currently included in that test. Swerve is nice because it actually makes the distinction between 2 types of A/B tests. There's a conversion test and an engagement test. A conversion test, it just enforces that users can only contribute once to this test. So someone who comes into your A/B test, they either do what you want them to or they don't, and they can't come back in and spoof your results by like doing it over and over again, right? Which is really great that it enforces that for you. The other kind of A/B test that you can run is an engagement test, which is where you actually want people to contribute as many times as possible, right? And it'll enforce this difference for you. Now, instead of walking through like the little wizard for setting up an A/B test, I'm going to jump to the confirmation screen just so we can see all the different things that you can configure here. But you specify the event you're interested in. So if you're running a permission location, exclamation screen test, you want to know, did they grant that permission? We're running this test over all users. We don't really care about what kind of user they are. We just want to know, did they grant the permission or not? And the parameters for this particular test is we have 3 groups. We have the control group at 50%, so they just receive the default message as we've hard-coded it into the app. And then we have 2 treatment groups at 25% each that receive some sort of difference to the existing UI. You can see here that right now it's just configuring the image file name and a title, but we could also configure like a body text or a button text or whatever we wanted here. This is an example of an A/B test that we ran in the Capital One wallet and that we've completed and we've selected a winner from. Basically what you're looking at here is a test that we ran over a push notification that we send users if they're near a store where there's a coupon available for them. So we'll send them a push and it'll say something like, Macy's discount found 50% off, right? And we want people to click that notification so they come into the app and they engage with the feature that we've built. So we ran this A/B test and we're just changing the message. So instead of saying Macy's discount found 50% off, we put the discount front and center and say 50% off at Macy's, right? And that actually catches people's attention when they pull down their navigation bar and they see the discount front and center. As you can see here, we have the changed column just tells you the percent increase of people who tapped on the notification versus your control, like versus the hard-coded message. Treatment 2, which was 50% off at Macy's, increased the click rate by 8%. Again, it's a low number, but like you're literally just rearranging some text in a notification, and you're getting 8% more people like clicking on that notification and coming into your app. To do this on Firebase, it's a little more of a manual process that I'll go over. You end up defining, if we wanted to run the same kind of test, we have 3 conditions to define each of our random variants, 1 for the control, and then 1 for each of the variants each at 25%. We use the add value for condition feature of remote config to specify alternate values based on the conditions that the users match against. So if you're in variant 1, instead of getting like we need your location for a title, it would say get gift card reminders because that's something we could send a notification, I guess, about. So you end up doing this for each of the values that you want to A/B test. So your dashboard here starts to get a little bit cluttered because you have alternate values for every single one of your parameters that you want to have in your test. There's one problem here where your A/B test is effectively run from remote config, but the entity used to monitor your A/B test progress is Firebase Analytics, and the two are disconnected from each other. Your Firebase Analytics doesn't know about your A/B test because they're separate features of Firebase. So you end up having to bridge the two so that you can monitor using analytics how your A/B test is doing. The way they recommend doing this is you have another parameter of key value pairs that just tells the client what A/B test they're in. So are you in the control group? Are you in variant 1 or variant 2? And you end up sending this back up to Firebase Analytics through a user property. And then what this allows you to do is in analytics, you can look at your event that you care about monitoring, and you can filter it by each of the individual A/B test variants. One thing I mentioned earlier is you're running an A/B test and you think it's doing well. You shouldn't just end it there and jump the gun. You should actually iterate on your test, run it again, and see if what you think is winning is still going to win under a different set of test parameters. What we're looking at here is a graph of a specific analytic that we were tracking for an A/B test. It's kind of blurred out so I don't get in trouble, but what we have between the two gray bars is we've started running an A/B test, and this analytic is just tracking are people coming to a particular screen that we're trying to drive them to. So we can kind of see it go up as we run an A/B test. But the idea is we may not know, is our A/B test actually affecting this analytic, or is something else going on that's driving these numbers? So what we might do is we tweak the A/B test and we push it out to more people, right? And we see, hey, do the numbers go up accordingly? And they do, so that we can kind of be confident that A/B test is actually doing what we want it to do. So some pointers about A/B testing. Number one, is it scalable? Can you run a large number of A/B tests with your platform and manage them efficiently? Again, it may not be you, the developer, who is running the A/B tests. It could be a product person, right? So this needs to be very straightforward. Remote config, you kind of saw it's a little convoluted for how you have to do it. It's more of a manual process, but you can certainly do it. Swerve has a dedicated section for this, which is nice. How flexible is it to create different user segments? Both platforms do this fairly well. Does your platform enforce a difference between a conversion test and an engagement test? Can users come back in and spoof your test results, right? You could maybe do this with remote config, but it's not something that's supported out of the box. So you kind of just have to deal with it, whereas Swerve, that's sort of a built-in thing that it enforces for you. And how easy is it to choose and apply a winner? Again, with Swerve, this is built in. You can choose a winner and it gets rolled out to everybody. Whereas remote config, you could do this by removing all the variant conditions and then just changing the default values. Don't forget to iterate, right? Rerun your test, but with like a different split, and check that your winning variant is still winning. And then make sure you hard code the winner in your next release so you're not relying on the content being delivered from your A/B testing platform. So that was the bulk of the things I wanted to talk about. The rest is kind of just extra features on top that you might get with your library that you might want to think about. Number one is this idea of push notifications. Again, since the whole point of your A/B testing platform is to target specific groups of users for a test, it works great for push notifications. And the key thing you want to find out is, can you send A/B tested pushes? Can you send a push from your platform and specify a bunch of different texts and measure, do people click it? You can do this with Firebase remote config with Firebase cloud messages. To do this, you would set up an A/B test in remote config. You'd have the client send up what variant it's in as a user property, and then you could send a push for each of the different variants from Firebase cloud messaging. You could do this from Swerve, but it's kind of built in, so you set up one push campaign. You can click the A/B testing button, and you can just specify number of different texts as you want to send down, and it'll measure like, hey, do more people click on the text in B versus A? One thing you want to keep in mind is a lot of us allow the user to opt in or out of push notifications. So you want to be able to respect their setting. You don't want to send them a push notification from your platform and they've opted out of pushes. You can enforce this by sending up the opt-out, like did they opt out of push notifications as a user property. Next thing I'm going to talk about is manual data upload. And this is interesting where you want to run an A/B test for like a one-off test. For example, we want to target all users who made a purchase at like Starbucks last week, right? Yep. Why is this an issue? Number one, the devs have to bloat the code to write this logic in and send it up. Number two, this data might be confidential. You don't want to share it with your third-party library. And number three, if you've started sharing it with your third party, it may not be on the platform yet for you to run your test on. So solution one is, yeah, you go ahead and send this stuff up as a user property. Number two, which is supported by Swerve, if they have a REST API where you can feed it a CSV and upload that and run your test over that, it's a great option. Data export's fairly straightforward. Are you allowed to download CSVs from your platform to run complex queries on your data? And the last two things, which I'll go over really fast, is the idea of an end user identity. You can kind of see it coming, but you're sending a lot of user-specific data to your A/B testing platform, and you don't want that to be leaked if that platform gets hacked or something like that. You want to protect your users, but at the same time, you may want to target your specific users, like you may want to target Nick on your A/B testing platform. So you want to have a mapping go both ways while also protecting your users' data. So how do we protect our users' private information but run powerful tests? Easy way to do that is you come up with an alternate ID, like a correlation ID that you only send to your third party, and internally you keep that mapping between their third party ID or this correlation ID and your internal IDs. And you can send this up as a user property, or a lot of times your SDK will allow you to override their randomly generated ID that they develop for each device. And finally, what does QA testing look like for this? You're developing alternate experiences for given features, so you want to be able to test out what do they all look like for your end users. So you want a way to easily place your device in each A/B test variant. And you also want to verify that you're sending up events and user properties to your platform. Firebase remote config, you don't have an easy way to force a variant. So if you're running a test and it has 8 variants in it, you're kind of stuck like uninstalling, reinstalling, trying to get into each one. You can maybe figure out a way to do this using like the condition system, but it's not like built in for you. And then they also have a real-time map for sending events and user properties that you can verify against. Swerve, both of these features are built into the platform. So on the left, you have a real-time display of all the events and user properties set up by a debug device. And on the right, this is what you would see as a part of an A/B test that's running. You can just say, hey, place my device in variant 2. You relaunch the app, and now you get that experience. And that's my list. So what I would recommend that you do is if you're shopping for a third-party library for A/B testing, print out this list or like check out my my slides online and just make sure it passes all the different considerations. Don't get yourself into any pitfalls. And happy A/B testing.